In today's world, young people are exposed to an overwhelming volume of stimuli from the moment they wake up. Notifications, alarms, flashing screens, and constant updates begin the day with a spike in mental activity, often triggering stress responses before they even leave their beds. This constant digital and social stimulation mimics threat signals to the brain, particularly activating circuits associated with the stress response. The body doesn't differentiate between physical danger and psychological overload. The reaction is the same. Elevated cortisol, heightened alertness, and suppressed digestion and immunity. Repeated exposure to these conditions creates a baseline of chronic stress. Over time, this baseline becomes normalized, but the physiological toll continues to accumulate. Instead of recovery, the brain is repeatedly pushed into high alert states, which disrupt natural rhythms. This disruption alters how young people sleep, eat, relate, and focus. The environment is no longer merely passive, it actively shapes behavior and biology. A central player in this process is the autonomic nervous system, which controls involuntary responses such as heart rate, respiration, and digestion. Under chronic stress, the sympathetic branch of this system, the one responsible for fight or flight, is continually activated. This state is useful in moments of real danger, but harmful when sustained over days or weeks. When the body remains in this heightened state, the parasympathetic branch, the one responsible for rest and recovery, is suppressed. This imbalance leads to poor sleep, low energy, and difficulty concentrating. Moreover, persistent sympathetic activation impairs memory and emotional regulation. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain involved in decision-making and impulse control, begins to function poorly under these conditions. Meanwhile, the amygdala, which detects threat and fuels anxiety, becomes hyper-responsive. This leads to a cycle where small challenges feel overwhelming, and young people become increasingly reactive and fatigued. The environment's impact on neurobiology can also be seen in the overactivation of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal (HPA) axis, the body's primary stress response system. This axis releases cortisol in response to perceived stress, and while helpful short-term, chronic elevation impairs immune function and shrinks important brain areas like the hippocampus. The hippocampus is essential for memory and learning, and its degradation can lead to brain fog and poor cognitive flexibility. As cortisol levels remain elevated, inflammation increases throughout the body, contributing to issues like acne, fatigue, digestive problems, and susceptibility to illness. These symptoms are often mistaken for laziness or lack of discipline, but they're the biological results of long-term stress overload. Rather than blaming individual willpower, it's critical to understand the role of environmental and systemic pressures. From this lens, healing starts with reducing the triggers, not just reacting to symptoms. And other concerning factor is the erosion of boundaries between work, rest, and play. With smartphones and remote access, the line between productivity and leisure is blurred. Young people may study while scrolling social media, rest while thinking about deadlines, or attempt to relax with constant stimulation from videos or games. This fragmented lifestyle keeps the brain in a semi-stress state where it never fully turns off. As a result, even sleep is impaired, with poor depth and irregular cycles. Without deep restorative sleep, the body cannot reset cortisol levels, repair cells, or consolidate memory. The following day then begins in a depleted state, compounding the stress response. Over weeks and months, this pattern leads to emotional instability, irritability, and a sense of burnout. Importantly, these are not signs of weakness, but of a nervous system stuck in overdrive. To reverse this pattern, the first step is awareness. Recognizing the ways in which modern life consistently triggers stress systems. While it may not be possible to eliminate all sources, there are practical ways to reset the nervous system daily. One powerful tool is exposure to natural light early in the morning. This helps synchronize the body's circadian rhythm, improving hormone balance and sleep quality. Simple breathwork techniques like box breathing or long exhalations can shift the body out of sympathetic dominance and into parasympathetic recovery. Cold exposure, like a brief cold shower, can increase adrenaline in a controlled manner, improving stress resilience. Exercise is another potent regulator, not just for physical health, but for calming the mind and enhancing neuroplasticity. These practices don't require expensive tools or apps. They are grounded in biology and can be accessed freely. In addition to physical practices, digital hygiene plays a massive role in calming the nervous system. Turning off unnecessary notifications, setting screen time limits, and establishing tech-free periods during the day can dramatically reduce micro-stressors. Especially important is creating a buffer zone before bed, at least an hour without screens or stimulating content. During this time, the brain winds down, melatonin rises naturally, and the transition to sleep becomes smoother. This promotes deeper rest and more stable energy the next day. Additionally, spending time outdoors, ideally in green or natural environments, has been shown to lower cortisol and reduce rumination. Even a short daily walk in nature can offer measurable benefits to brain health and emotional stability. These simple shifts, practiced consistently, help retrain the nervous system to respond more appropriately to life's challenges. The social environment also plays a crucial role in stress modulation. Human beings are wired for connection, and supportive relationships can buffer the effects of stress. However, social media has distorted these relationships, replacing deep connection with superficial engagement. The pressure to perform online, combined with the fear of missing out, adds another layer of stress. Young people may feel isolated even while being constantly connected. Replacing some of this screen time with real conversations, in-person meetings, or even quiet solitude can help restore nervous system balance. Laughter, physical touch, and meaningful eye contact activate pathways in the brain that promote calm and emotional safety. These aren't luxuries. They are biological needs that must be met to stay mentally and physically healthy in today's world. Nutrition is another hidden stressor, often overlooked in discussions about mental and emotional health. Ultra-processed foods, high in sugar and artificial ingredients, spike blood glucose and contribute to inflammation. This biochemical instability directly affects brain function, mood, and energy levels. Regular consumption of these foods can amplify the effects of chronic stress and make the body more vulnerable to fatigue and illness. In contrast, nutrient-dense foods, especially those rich in omega-3s, magnesium, and antioxidants, support the brain's stress buffering systems. Hydration, often ignored, also plays a role in energy regulation and cognitive clarity. A well-fueled body handles stress far more effectively than one running on caffeine, sugar, and processed snacks. Ultimately, what young people are experiencing is not just a health crisis, but a systems-level failure. The design of the environment, digital, nutritional, social, is not aligned with how the human brain and body were built to operate. Until this mismatch is addressed, stress illness will continue to rise among the youth. The answer isn't more medication or more productivity hacks. It's a fundamental return to behaviors that regulate the nervous system naturally. Sleep, light, movement, real food, nature, and community aren't outdated, they're essential. These practices empower individuals to regain control over their biology, even in an overstimulating world. The science is clear. Health is not just a state of mind. It's a state of balance in the nervous system, and it can be restored one habit at a time. In modern society, the brain's dopamine system is under siege. Dopamine, a chemical messenger responsible for motivation, reward, and drive, evolved to reward us for survival behaviors like eating, achieving goals, and social bonding. But today, this finely tuned system is being overwhelmed by an endless stream of artificial rewards. Likes, junk food, scrolling, games, and short-form videos. This isn't because the activities lost their value, but because the brain's reward system has been hijacked by overstimulation. When dopamine is artificially spiked over and over, the baseline level of pleasure drops, and the brain starts craving higher and more frequent hits just to feel normal. This cycle leads to compulsive behaviors, short attention spans, and an inability to stay engaged with long-term goals. Young people often feel broken for not being able to focus, but in truth, their neurobiology has adapted to an environment of endless distraction. The constant pursuit of the next hit isn't laziness, it's a neurological survival response in a hyper-stimulated world. The fallout of this dopamine imbalance extends beyond mood and motivation. It affects how we think, learn, and behave. In the brain, dopamine plays a crucial role in working memory, focus, and effort-based learning. These constant inputs trigger unnatural dopamine spikes, which initially feel good but are quickly followed by deep lows. The brain senses this imbalance and responds by reducing its sensitivity to dopamine, a process known as downregulation. This means that over time, the same activities no longer provide the same satisfaction. The result is a growing sense of boredom, apathy, and even depression. Young people exposed to this pattern daily are experiencing a crash in natural motivation, not because they lack discipline, but because their reward circuitry is being rewired against them. The illusion of constant pleasure hides a deeper problem: dopamine tolerance. Just like a drug, too much stimulation leads the brain to demand more to feel the same effect. A person who once found joy in reading, walking, or creative work may now find those activities dull or exhausting. It's not about removing pleasure from life, but about restoring balance and reclaiming the brain's natural rhythm of effort and reward. One of the most effective strategies for this is practicing dopamine spacing, or deliberate reduction in high stimulation activities. This might involve taking regular breaks from social media, limiting fast food or sugar intake, and spending intentional time doing low stimulus activities like reading, walking, or journaling. Initially, these habits may feel boring or even uncomfortable. That discomfort is a signal of the brain resetting its reward baseline. Over time, these activities begin to feel enjoyable again. Not because they've changed, but because the brain is healing from overstimulation. The key is consistency. Allowing enough time for neurochemical balance to return. Effort-based dopamine release is another powerful tool. When this system is depleted or desensitized, it becomes much harder to stay on task, tolerate boredom, or delay gratification. Tasks that require sustained effort, such as studying or working out, begin to feel overwhelming. As a result, many young people turn to multitasking or abandon tasks prematurely, seeking the next small hit of pleasure. This depletes energy reserves even further and creates a loop of shallow engagement and chronic fatigue. The inability to complete meaningful work leads to feelings of guilt and low self-esteem, which in turn makes the brain seek out more quick pleasure for relief. This cycle is not emotional weakness. It is biochemical dysregulation disguised as personal failure. Breaking free from this cycle requires understanding a key principle. Dopamine isn't inherently bad. This refers to situations where dopamine is released not just at the end of a task, but during the process of hard work. When the brain learns to associate pleasure with the act of striving rather than the reward itself, motivation becomes more sustainable. This can be trained by setting small goals and recognizing progress during the process, not just at the outcome. For example, acknowledging a moment of deep focus, a completed paragraph, or a successful workout rep can rewire the brain to enjoy the work itself. Over time, this builds mental endurance and a deeper sense of satisfaction. It's not glamorous, but it's effective. The shift from outcome-driven motivation to process-driven effort transforms the relationship with work, learning, and personal growth. Another key to resetting dopamine balance is adding friction between desire and gratification. In today's world, nearly every desire is met instantly. Food is a click away, entertainment autoplays, and information is delivered in seconds. But human brains evolved in a world where effort was required before reward. When effort is missing, the reward system becomes confused and overactive. By adding simple delays, like pausing before watching a video, cooking instead of ordering, or walking instead of driving, dopamine becomes tied to effort again. This not only improves motivation, but also enhances enjoyment and fulfillment. Young people who practice these micro delays begin to feel more in control of their impulses because the brain starts associating work with reward rather than expecting instant pleasure. It's a powerful biology-aligned way to reclaim agency in a world of digital temptation. Sleep and rest also play a crucial role in dopamine regulation, increases dopamine receptor sensitivity, and promotes long-term motivation. Exercise creates a steady, natural rise in dopamine that supports energy and mood without the crash of artificial stimulation. Even a 20-minute walk can reduce cravings, sharpen focus, and elevate mood. Importantly, exercise works best when it's consistent, not extreme. Young people often feel pressure to train intensely, but in terms of brain chemistry, regular moderate movement is far more beneficial for long-term dopamine balance. Moving the body creates stability in the mind, and that stability is key for breaking addictive loops and restoring clarity. Social connection, when authentic and grounded, also modulates the dopamine system. Meaningful conversations, shared experiences, and physical touch trigger dopamine in a healthy, sustainable way. When the brain is sleep-deprived, dopamine receptors become less responsive, increasing cravings for stimulation. This is why poor sleep often leads to more screen time, junk food, or impulsive behavior the next day. It's not a lack of willpower, it's the brain trying to restore balance through external stimulation. Prioritizing consistent, high-quality sleep allows the dopamine system to reset naturally. This means sleeping at the same time each night, avoiding screens an hour before bed, and allowing for enough deep sleep cycles. Rest isn't wasted time. It's the recovery system for mental clarity, motivation, and self-control. Without it, any attempt to improve focus or discipline is an uphill battle against biology. Movement is another natural way to balance dopamine levels. Physical activity, especially aerobic movement and resistance training. In contrast, social media often creates a synthetic version of connection. Brief highs followed by loneliness and comparison. Replacing digital interaction with in-person experiences, phone calls, or even quiet presence with a friend or family member rewires the brain for deeper satisfaction. Loneliness increases stress and impairs dopamine signaling, while community support does the opposite. Building real human connection is one of the most effective and ancient dopamine resets available. It's not only emotionally nourishing, but also biologically essential for health. The ultimate goal is not to eliminate all sources of pleasure, but to redefine the relationship with it. By learning how dopamine works, young people can shift from being victims of overstimulation to masters of their motivation. This process involves discomfort, patience, and repetition, but it leads to a brain that feels joy in simple things again. It leads to energy that comes from within rather than needing to be chased through screens or sugar. The modern world offers convenience, but at the cost of neurological balance. By stepping back and reclaiming control, it's possible to build a more focused, motivated, and resilient mind. The path back to natural motivation isn't easy, but it's worth it. And it begins with understanding what's happening inside, not just what's happening outside. Modern life has completely disrupted the natural sleep-wake cycle that the human body evolved to follow. Screens, artificial lighting, and late-night stimulation confuse the internal clock that governs when we feel alert and when we feel sleepy. This internal system, known as the circadian rhythm, is not just about sleep. It also controls hormone release, digestion, immune function, and even mood. When it is disrupted, the entire body suffers. The brain depends on cues from the environment, especially light, to align itself with the 24-hour day, but when those cues are missing or distorted, the result is chaotic energy levels, poor focus, and emotional instability. Young people, who are especially sensitive to circadian disruption, often go to bed late, struggle to wake up, and spend their days fighting fatigue. It isn't a lack of ambition, it's a misaligned biology that makes everything harder than it should be. One of the most critical cues for the circadian clock is exposure to natural light, particularly within the first hour of waking. When the eyes are exposed to morning sunlight, it triggers a cascade of hormonal activity that promotes wakefulness and alertness. At the same time, it sets a timer for melatonin, the hormone that makes us feel sleepy, to be released later in the evening. Without this early light exposure, melatonin doesn't rise and fall properly, and sleep becomes delayed or shallow. Instead of waking up refreshed, many wake up feeling groggy and disoriented, already at a disadvantage for the rest of the day. Indoor lighting, even bright overhead bulbs, does not send the same powerful signal to the brain. A few minutes outside each morning can have a profound effect on energy, focus, and sleep depth that night. Sleep quality depends on more than just the number of hours spent in bed. The timing of sleep, the depth of the cycles, and the hormonal shifts that happen throughout the night are all essential. Deep sleep, which mostly occurs in the first part of the night, is when the brain cleans itself, processes memories, and restores emotional balance. REM sleep, which happens more in the second half, supports learning, creativity, and mood regulation. When people go to bed very late or wake up repeatedly, these stages are interrupted. Even if total sleep time looks sufficient, the benefits are lost. This explains why many young people sleep for 8 hours but still feel tired all day. The solution is not necessarily more sleep, but better linked and higher quality sleep. That starts with respecting the natural rhythm set by light, darkness, and consistent routine. On the other side of the day, nighttime light, especially from screens, has an equally powerful but harmful effect. Blue light emitted from phones, tablets, and computers tricks the brain into thinking it is still daytime. This suppresses melatonin and keeps the brain in an alert state even when the body is exhausted. The result is difficulty falling asleep, restless tossing, and waking up without feeling restored. This delay pushes the entire rhythm later, causing people to stay up longer and sleep in later when possible, further disconnecting them from natural cycles. Over time, this leads to social jet lag, when internal time no longer matches external obligations like school, work, or morning responsibilities. The misalignment creates a chronic sense of fatigue, brain fog, and emotional irritability that feels like burnout, but is actually a hormonal shift caused by disrupted light exposure. The consequences of ignoring circadian rhythms are more serious than just feeling tired. Irregular sleep patterns have been linked to higher rates of anxiety, depression, obesity, and metabolic issues. Cortisol, the hormone that helps us feel alert in the morning, should rise naturally around sunrise and decline throughout the day. But with late nights and artificial light, cortisol rises too late or stays elevated into the evening, leading to restlessness and poor recovery. Insulin sensitivity, which affects how the body processes food, also follows a circadian pattern. When eating happens late at night, blood sugar control worsens, leading to inflammation and weight gain. Even immune function is affected, making the body more susceptible to illness and slower to heal. These are not just lifestyle issues. They are physiological consequences of circadian misalignment. One way to begin repairing the circadian system is by setting fixed wake and sleep times, even on weekends. The brain thrives on consistency. Going to bed and waking up at different hours each day confuses the internal clock, making it harder to fall asleep and wake up naturally. Creating a wind-down routine also helps signal the brain that it's time to shift into rest mode. This might include dimming lights, turning off screens, reading a physical book, or doing gentle stretches. These behaviors, repeated nightly, become cues for the brain to start releasing melatonin and lowering arousal. Over time, sleep becomes deeper, faster to initiate, and more refreshing. It is not about perfection, but about rhythm, training the brain and body to trust the routine and respond to it predictably. Food and exercise also have strong circadian influences. Eating at regular times, especially early in the day, helps reinforce the body's internal clock. Large meals late at night, however, disrupt digestion and interfere with deep sleep. Similarly, exercising early in the day supports the natural rise of cortisol and prepares the body for restful sleep at night. Late-night intense workouts can have the opposite effect, increasing adrenaline and delaying melatonin release. It's not about avoiding exercise, but understanding its timing. The body is a clock with many gears, and movement and nutrition are key ways to keep those gears turning in sync. Young people who align their eating and activity with daylight hours often experience more stable energy, better moods, and sharper focus. Technology can work against circadian health, but it can also be used wisely to support it. Using screen filters that reduce blue light, setting phone limits before bed, or wearing blue light bleaking glasses in the evening can reduce melatonin suppression. Some even use sunrise alarm clocks that gradually brighten the room in the morning, mimicking natural dawn and easing the transition into wakefulness. These small adjustments add up. The goal is to reduce internal confusion, making sure the brain gets clear, consistent signals about when it's time to be awake and when it's time to rest. In an unpredictable world, building predictability into sleep routines becomes a superpower for mental clarity, emotional resilience, and physical well-being. The good news is that the circadian system is highly trainable. Just as it can be thrown off by late nights and blue light, it can be recalibrated through consistent habits. Morning light, regular sleep times, reduced evening stimulation, aligned eating, and timely movement all act as gears that reset the brain's internal clock. This is not about discipline alone, it's about biology. When the body is working with its natural design rather than against it, everything feels easier. Motivation returns, energy stabilizes, and stress becomes more manageable. The modern world may challenge the circadian system, but with small, intentional actions, it can be brought back into balance, and that balance is the foundation of real, lasting health. Stress is often seen as a mental burden, but it begins as a physical process in the body. When the brain perceives a threat, real or imagined, it triggers the release of chemicals like cortisol and adrenaline. These hormones prepare the body to respond quickly, increasing heart rate, sharpening focus, and redirecting energy to essential systems. In short bursts, this response is useful and even necessary. But in today's world, the stress response is activated constantly through social pressure, deadlines, digital overload, and uncertainty about the future. When this system is always on, the body never has time to reset. Chronic stress wears down the immune system, disrupts sleep, and hijacks the brain's ability to regulate emotions and decision-making. For young people, this ongoing pressure creates a storm of burnout, anxiety, and emotional volatility that becomes a normal state of existence. Many young people blame themselves for feeling unmotivated or emotionally unstable, without realizing that disrupted sleep is the root cause. The brain needs regular cycles of light and dark, effort and recovery, stimulation and stillness to perform at its best. Circadian misalignment dulls these cycles, blurring the line between day and night, work and rest, focus and fatigue. Restoring these patterns takes patience, but the results are transformative. Clearer thinking, better decisions, improved mood, and a stronger immune system all begin with a regular sleep-wake rhythm. It's one of the most powerful and underrated tools for health, success, and long-term happiness. The nervous system has two primary modes: the sympathetic system, which drives the stress response, and the parasympathetic system, which promotes rest and recovery. These two systems are supposed to balance each other, switching back and forth as needed. However, modern life keeps people stuck in sympathetic overdrive. Notifications, noise, overstimulation, and constant urgency keep the body in fight or flight mode even when there's no real danger. Over time, the brain adapts to this high-level state by rewiring its baseline, making calm feel foreign and even uncomfortable. As a result, many people don't know how to relax, not because they don't want to, but because their physiology doesn't remember how. This leads to emotional numbness, short tempers, and chronic fatigue masquerading as laziness or low drive. To reverse this cycle, the nervous system must be retrained to feel safe again. This doesn't mean avoiding challenges, but learning to regulate the body's response to them. One of the most effective tools for this is breath. Breathing is the only automatic function we can consciously control, and by changing how we breathe, we can signal safety to the brain. Slow, deep, and rhythmic breathing, especially exhaling longer than inhaling, activates the parasympathetic system. Over time, practicing this kind of breathing lowers the baseline of stress in the body. When the brain senses calm through the breath, it downshifts the stress response and increases clarity, patience, and focus. It's a simple practice, but it has deep physiological impact that restores control in moments of overwhelm. Another powerful tool for stress regulation is movement, especially forms that combine rhythm with presence. Walking, dancing, swimming, or even yoga allows the body to process built-up stress through motion. When stress hormones aren't discharged, they linger in the bloodstream, keeping the system on edge. Movement helps metabolize them, restoring balance. Importantly, the goal isn't intense exercise, but mindful movement that reconnects the body and mind. Regular daily movement, even for just 15 minutes, can reduce cortisol levels, stabilize mood, and create a sense of internal rhythm that anchors the nervous system. This physical outlet is especially important for young people who are often sedentary but emotionally overwhelmed. Motion restores emotional fluidity and resilience. Nature is another underrated but deeply effective antidote to chronic stress. Time spent in natural environments, away from screens, noise, and artificial light, soothe the brain's overactive circuits. Studies have shown that being in green spaces reduces blood pressure, lowers stress hormones, and boosts mood. The reason lies in evolution. Humans developed in natural environments, not artificial ones. The sight, sounds, and smells of nature activate a kind of biological memory that reminds the brain it is safe. Even 10 minutes a day spent outdoors, walking, sitting under a tree, or listening to natural sounds can shift the nervous system from tension to restoration. For those feeling disconnected and overwhelmed, nature is not a luxury, but a necessity. Connection with others also plays a critical role in regulating stress. When people feel seen, heard, and supported, their brains release oxytocin, a hormone that lowers stress and increases feelings of safety and trust. This is why a single conversation with a trusted friend or loved one can instantly change how one feels. In contrast, isolation amplifies stress and activates the brain's alarm system. The problem is that many young people today are hyperconnected digitally but deeply isolated emotionally. Superficial connections on social media do not satisfy the brain's need for authentic bonding. Building meaningful relationships, even with a few people, provides a buffer against the chaos of the world. It offers emotional co-regulation, a process where being calm with someone else helps the body remember how to be calm alone. Awareness is the foundation of stress mastery. Most people live in a reactive state, unaware of the patterns that drive their anxiety. But when stress becomes conscious, when a person notices how it feels, where it sits in the body, and what triggers it, it loses some of its power. Practices like journaling, meditation, or even simply pausing for a few minutes of silence bring attention to internal experience. This awareness creates space between stimulus and response, allowing for intentional choices instead of automatic reactions. It turns stress from a wave that knocks someone over into a signal they can understand and work with. Awareness doesn't eliminate stress, but it transforms the relationship with it, making it something manageable instead of overwhelming. Sleep, nutrition, and hydration all support the body's ability to handle stress, but they are often neglected under pressure. Poor sleep increases cortisol and lowers emotional control. Inconsistent meals, especially those high in sugar and processed foods, create energy crashes that mimic anxiety. Dehydration causes physical tension, headaches, and irritability that are often mistaken for emotional problems. Taking care of the body is not vanity or weakness, it's preparation. A well-rested, nourished, and hydrated brain is far better equipped to deal with stress than one running on caffeine, sugar, and 5 hours of sleep. These simple physical practices create a foundation of stability in an otherwise unpredictable world. Boundaries are also essential to reducing stress. Many people say yes to everything, not out of desire, but out of fear. Fear of disappointing others, fear of missing out, or fear of falling behind. But every yes given to something unimportant is a no to something meaningful. Overcommitment is a fast track to burnout. Learning to say no with clarity and kindness is a skill that protects energy and mental space. It is not selfish, it is self-preservation. Boundaries create room for rest, creativity, and personal growth. Without them, stress multiplies, and life becomes a constant reaction instead of an intentional path. Setting limits is a courageous act in a culture that glorifies busyness. In the end, managing stress is about learning to live in alignment with the body's natural design. It's not about removing every challenge, but about having tools to meet those challenges with resilience and clarity. The modern world will always be fast, noisy, and full of demands, but the nervous system can be trained to find calm within that chaos. Through breath, movement, nature, connection, awareness, and intentional habits, the body and mind can return to balance. Stress will always be part of life, but suffering from it doesn't have to be. Young people can reclaim their energy, clarity, and sense of agency, not by pushing harder, but by understanding how their biology truly works and learning to work with it instead of against it. That's how real strength is built, from the inside out.